Archaeology is the intersection of many disciplines, both in humanities and in sciences, and in the last decade in technology as well. Dr. Arianna Traviglia's work is placed at this intersection, and most of her research focuses on mediating the inclusion of digital practices within the study and management of cultural heritage. She leads the Center for Cultural Heritage Technology, based in Venice, the satellite center of the Italian Institute of Technology in charge of the Cultural Landscape Scanner project, carried out in collaboration with the European Space Agency. Their work in the center focuses on the preservation, conservation, and analysis of cultural heritage through computer vision, machine learning, robotics, and material science. The aim of the project is to create an algorithm which brings them all together through AI with a common purpose: detecting archaeological sites still buried underground. In this conversation, recorded in Venice in July 2021, we talked about the technologies which are shaping the archaeology of the 21st century, the challenges of AI, and the need of interconnection between humanities and hard sciences.
I'm Arianna Traviglia. I'm the coordinator of the Center for Cultural Heritage Technology, which is a satellite center of the Italian Institute of Technology. And I work here with a team of about 20 people on preservation and conservation analysis of cultural heritage. When I started our archaeology several years ago, there was nothing of what we have right now, or there was just the beginning of it. About 20 or 30 years ago, there were already some initial digital applications to archaeology, but they were restricted to some very specific fields. In the past 10 to 15 years, we have seen really a proliferation, I would say, of technologies that can be applied to cultural heritage, not only digital technologies, but also other types of technologies, like, for example, the use of particular instruments to analyze the materials of which cultural heritage is made of. So we have been seeing in the past years really a huge number of new technologies that can be applied, not only for analyzing cultural heritage, but also to study it in a better way, to study it better, to understand connections between things that were not really visible before, because when you have a large amount of data that you are analyzing, it's very hard to analyze them just as a human being. And these digital technologies especially make it very easy for us instead to extract a new meaning from the data and to understand better our cultural heritage. So when we speak about technologies for cultural heritage, we don't speak only about the digital technologies, but also about a number of instruments that we can use for physical and chemical analysis of our cultural heritage. So these instruments enable us to extract information about the age of the objects that we are analyzing, or the provenance of the materials, for example, the metal or the glass they are made of, or they can provide information on the state of degradation, of corrosion of cultural heritage. So this data can then be used to preserve better cultural heritage we are in charge of, and they provide also important information that can help us to reconstruct the history of these objects. For example, they can tell us something about when a certain object has been created, where the sand of a piece of glass came from. And this provides also information about the trade in the past, and which city was connected to another city, for example, so that we can understand what's the flux of the trade, which direction the trade was going, which cities were connected in the past, which areas, which regions were connected. Archaeology today is not the archaeology of 30 years ago. The introduction of new technologies, both the digital and technologies, chemical, physical technologies for understanding better cultural heritage have changed really the way in which we work. Not only when we collect the data, for example, in archaeological excavation, but also when we analyze the objects that have been, for example, found during an archaeological excavation. Now we look at certain type of data that we didn't use to collect before, and we know that by collecting this data, we can extract new information. It changed completely the process in which we collect the data and we store the data, because it's not only just getting information about the object, but also to collect all the information or the metadata that were linked to the discovery of certain object. So the technologies have changed a lot the way in which we do archaeology, because now we know that we can really answer new questions that we didn't even think we would be able to answer 20 or 30 years ago. And this is through these new technologies. And the shift that we are doing is even bigger now that, for example, applications like artificial intelligence have become more common. So now we need a very large amount of data that can be extracted by any type of archaeological activity, and we know that this data can be then processed in a way that we can extract new information. The Cultural Landscape Scanner project started last year, and it is a collaboration with the European Space Agency and our institute. In this project, we basically automatize a process that normally in the past archaeologists were doing just by their eyes. Archaeologists have been using satellite imagery, and before that aerial images, to detect unknown archaeological sites that are still buried underground. And what we are doing now with the European Space Agency is to try to make automatic this process. So it's to look at the ways in which archaeologists have been doing this work by eyes, so checking images that are in front of their screens, and make it automatic by teaching a computer how to do it, the way in which we do it. So what we look at and how we can understand that could be potentially an archaeological site. So the first phase of this project is just about teaching something to the computer. It's training the computer to think like an archaeologist, to look at a certain trace or anomaly on the image and notify to the machine that that could be an archaeological site. And then after showing hundreds and hundreds of these, we will be able also to let the computer try by itself to guess which one could be an archaeological site in a set image. So we are now in the teaching phase or in the training phase. So in the training phase, what we have to do is to feed the machine with several of these archaeological traces that we already know that are probably archaeological sites still buried. And by doing that, we also teach the computer to look at what is around them, so the context in which they are. So it's like a training to a sort of a little kid, because it's very simple, it's just telling the machine, so this is an archaeological site and this is not. We show things that are really archaeological sites and things that are similar, but we know to be like modern features. So it's really like training a young person on recognizing something. And then the machine will start to guess. So we'll try on the base of what it has learned, we'll try to guess which ones are really archaeological features and which ones are not. Archaeological traces look like an anomaly on something that is regular. So for example, if we look at crops from a very high distance, like in a satellite imagery, we would normally see the entire field completely, regular and with the same color. But if there is an archaeological site underneath that is changing the biomass of the vegetation lying on top of it, the crops in that point will be different. That means it could be shorter, could be yellower, could be drier, for example, or at the opposite, it could be growing more than the surrounding vegetation, or having a different color, being greener, depending on the type of archaeological deposit that is underneath. So if you walk in this field, for example, you would not be seeing very likely this anomaly, but you can see it much better from another view, from the view from above, because that enables you to see the entire picture, the entire area, and in this way being able to understand that there is something there, that it's quite irregular, it is different from the rest of the vegetation. In this moment we are using archaeological data sets from several countries, from Italy mainly, just because we have plenty of them, but also from other colleagues from other countries like the Netherlands and Scotland. And this is because we want to create a very robust algorithm that can detect archaeological features coming from different areas and also from different historical periods and from different cultures. So with this I mean that we want it to be robust enough to guess any sort of archaeological feature like an archaeologist would do. Of course, each archaeologist is normally specialized in a specific chronological period and in a specific geographic area. We want our machines being able to recognize all the type of features, while now current research is normally concentrated on detecting features for a specific area or a specific type of archaeology, let's say, while what we are trying to do is to put together different type of features and train a machine to recognize all of them. Once an archaeological feature is detected and is validated as an archaeological feature, what we normally do is to map it within a special platform called Geographic Information System. And this is normally done because within a Geographic Information System we can put together a number of other information, so we can check these features that we think we have recognized. We can check it against the other information to understand if that could be for real an archaeological feature or not. What does it mean? It means that we check this feature against, for example, historical maps to see if historical maps show for that area some specific object, some specific entity that is thrown in the old map, and that can provide us information about the nature of the entity we have detected. Or we can map it against geomorphological maps, for example, that can help us to understand more about the nature of the feature that we have detected. Once an archaeological feature is mapped, then in some cases the next stage is to go to check with an archaeological team, normally with people with different type of expertise. And what we can do once we are there is to look for hints and clues that there could be still an archaeological site, an archaeological structure lying underneath the soil. So with these teams, we normally look at the ground, looking for things like pieces of pottery or glass or other type of indicators of an archaeological structure. In some specific cases, we can also do some coring or use geophysics. So special instruments that enable us to see if there is something underneath without the need of excavation. So we have started the project about the end of last year. In this phase, we are still training the machine, but we can still see the first results. So the machine is now able to recognize features that are very similar to the ones with which we have trained the machine. So we have been training the machine to recognize, for example, roads that are simple features, they are linear, and the machine now is able to detect a simple feature of that type. Once we will have more data and more labeled data, we will be able to train the machine to recognize more complex type of features and objects. And that will take certainly some time. Remote sensing has been used by archaeologists for many, many years, almost a century or more, I would say. Of course, there were not satellite imagery about a century ago, but there were aerial pictures. And archaeologists have been using them for really long time, because they can really show things that are hard to grasp when you are on the ground. So in the past, about 30 years, I would say, archaeologists have started to use the satellite imagery. The biggest limit at the beginning was their coarse spatial resolution. That means that the pictures had not enough resolution for being really useful in the technical archaeological sites. In the last 5 years, about, the technologies that are in the technologies related to satellite sensors have improved dramatically, and now the quality of the images we can have from satellites is really incredible and can be used. And the other thing is that also that they can cover very large areas of our planet, so they are extremely useful to check for large, broad areas. Machine learning instead, or artificial intelligence, has been used for very few years. We have started about 4 or 5 years ago, so we are still in the process to check how well it works. It's a new development, and we will see in the next 5 to 10 years how good it can perform. I do not expect great results at the beginning. It will take time, as everything, but we will get there. The biggest challenge in using artificial intelligence for remote sensing is data. We have a large amount of data as far as satellite imagery, but we have very small number of data that can be used for training the machine. What does it mean? Basically, when you have to teach the machine what is an archaeological site, you have to add to this image what we call labels. So it's like metadata or information, extra information telling the machine that that specific anomaly on the image is an archaeological site. So we do not have enough of this training data, and that's right now the biggest challenge we have, not only for this specific project, but for any project using artificial intelligence, because we need to create this new type of data that are labeled, and only once we have enough of them, we will be able to train the machines in the right way. We are using a special platform providing satellite data, which is called Copernicus. It's a European platform that has been established a few years ago, and provides for free to any user satellite imagery. We chose that one specifically because there are not many platforms available providing free data. And especially because the type of data, for example, you might be thinking about Google Earth, but Google Earth is just optical imagery. So it means that it's just like a picture. What we are after instead are images that contain also another type of information linked to the infrared bands. And these are the type of specific data that can be found in a platform like Copernicus. Besides identifying archaeological features, the remote sensing can be used also for identifying looting activities. Looting is the illegal excavation of archaeological sites, and once a site is illegally excavated, the cultural goods that were within are put into the illegal market and can be purchased also quite easily, unfortunately. There is a lot of trafficking ongoing through social media, for example. So this type of there are ongoing investigations also to try to stop this. So this is certainly a big problem. Trafficking of cultural heritage has been always existing, but in the past years has become really a dramatic problem, especially connecting to the turmoil in the Middle East. Remote sensing can help because it can help us to identify which areas are looted. Very often these areas are quite remote, or in places that are difficult to reach, or places that are dangerous to reach, let's think about, for example, Syria in the past years or some areas of Iraq. So it is extremely useful to be able to use satellite imagery to detect ongoing illegal activities of this type. So we can teach a machine to detect looting. Looting has normally specific type of patterning, so it's quite easy to teach a machine how to recognize an area that is being looted. It's a specific type of digs that are not like an extensive archaeological excavation. They create sort of moon-like craters, and they are quite easy to be recognized in satellite imagery. So this project is really, I would say, a holistic project, because we put together things that are very different, like cultural heritage and artificial intelligence, and then we manage the information through geographic information system, and then we add a physical part of physical checks of the sites. So it is a very complex project that brings together things that could normally be seen as different stream of research. And we bring them together because we think that just bringing that together, really pushing for strong multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, we can really achieve something. And artificial intelligence is helping us a lot, clearly, but we need to bring in also a lot of expertise from other fields. And that's why it is important to keep these disciplines all together, because just when we combine data from different sources, extracted in different ways, we can really create a new knowledge. The regular way in which scientists have shared their research in the past was through scientific publications, but now things are really changing, and a lot of them are instead communicating research through even very inventive ways, promoting exhibitions or promoting other type of activities that can really bring their research to the general audience and make it easier to be understood, even if it is very complicated. So this is done sometimes using activities specific for little kids, some other times using other ways to engage young public, and other times is more generic for any type of public that could be interested in a certain topic. And there are also activities promoted by the European Commission. For example, we have around September, all over Europe, there is the Researchers' Night, which is a way in which universities can show the work that is being done from their research to the general public. And there are a number of ongoing projects and activities that are really being proactive in this sense, and there are a number of institutions that are really supporting it. There is still a very strong separation between humanities and hard sciences. I would say is a systemic fault. And this is, I think, a big problem, because research cannot really be done in this way when two disciplines like this are so separated. We need to create more interconnection between them, which means also that people with a background in humanities need to study more of art science and vice versa, because otherwise these two worlds cannot really talk together. And it is necessary for each of them being able to have a common language that is the only one that can really enable science to progress. Artificial intelligence is really shaking science and the humanities as we know them. It's making really us think about data and information and creation of knowledge in a different way, because we now know and perceive that we have new ways of creating new knowledge. And in this case, in this sense, it can act really as a game changer completely, can really change the way in which we approach science, and we create data, we process data, and extract a new meaningful information. As far as me, we should protect more our cultural heritage, because we have an obligation to pass cultural heritage as we receive it, and in a better way that we received it, to the next generation. If we don't start to really protect it more, we will not be able to leave much to next generations. There are so many things happening right now in the world and that are causing a loss of cultural heritage. Climate change right now is creating a lot of potential new dangers to cultural heritage, but we have also turmoil and wars that have been creating a lot of issues to our cultural heritage. We have illegal activities like trafficking on cultural heritage, and we have the fact that sometimes we simply do not take care of it. We just forget about it, and that is also bringing it to get destroyed or ruined or to be degraded much faster than it should. So we should really protect it more and have more a sense of protecting it, because it is important, because it's related to our identity and it needs to be preserved for the future.